So we've now seen it in the headlines, you've heard it right here on this channel. There's definitely a shift going on in the current housing market. A lot of people are starting to compare this to potentially the bubble that occurred back in 2008. Today we're going to go through 3 quick graphs that are going to explain why this is a very different situation. Stick around while we get into it. Hello Central Maine, it is your realtor Nick Isgro with eXp Realty, and as I just said at the beginning, today I just want to touch on 3 quick data sets that are going to show you why the shift in the housing market that's going on right now is a very different scenario than the enormous bubble that we saw back in 2008. Obviously, with all of the news looking at interest rates, inflation, and what has been going on over the past couple of years, it's easy to make the comparison, but the 2 scenarios are very different, and we're going to get into that. Before we do, I want to welcome you here to the channel. If you've never been here before, we cover all things real estate here in the state of Maine, but particularly in the Central Maine market. If that is of interest to you or adds value to your process in the buying and selling of homes, do me a favor, go ahead and hit the like button on this video, hit subscribe, knock that little alarm bell, you'll be notified every time we put out new content. The first data point I want to get into today as we look at the comparison of what is going on in the housing market now to the explosion of the bubble back in 2008 is inventory. We repeated it over and over again for the last year, inventory. Why is that? It is because inventory is still at a historical undersupply of homes on the market. And that's really been driven by the fact that there has been an underbuilding of homes for at least the last 15 years. Now, yes, we have had a little bit of an influx of housing supply over the last several months, but on a national scale, that really just gets us to just short of 4 months of supply. Here in the Central Maine market, we're just barely over 1 month of supply. We're going to bring up a graph now that's going to show you in a historical context what this actually looks like, where we were and where we are now. Take a look at this. As you can see, back in 2007, 2008, 9, and 10, we had 9 and 10 months worth of supply on the market. You can see neither before nor since then have we had anywhere near that kind of supply versus the demand for homes that is on the market. And in fact, if you look in blue, you can see where we are now, still extremely short on supply, even compared to before we went into this period over the last couple of years, and as it looks like we're coming out of it now. Now, the second data set I want us to look at here today is lending standards. As we all know, back in 2007, 8, and 9, during that time, one of the things we discovered was that leading up to that period, banks had artificially created a fake demand in the market by lowering the credit standards, lowering the bar for what it took to actually qualify for a home mortgage. What that resulted in was a lot of people going out getting mortgages that really never had any business getting a mortgage in the first place. Since then, obviously, coming out of that crisis, lending standards were changed on the national level, and that actually has had an effect. And we're going to take a look at this graph coming up here. This graph here shows the Mortgage Credit Availability Index. Now, in this case, the higher the number, the easier it is to get a mortgage based on current lending standards and lending practices. What we actually just saw in the most recent release, you can see here on the graph at the end, a little dip. There was actually a decline of 5.4% in the Mortgage Credit Availability Index, indicating that it's actually getting harder to get a mortgage right now than it was even a couple of years ago, not easier. So we can see at the peak of the crisis, going into the crisis, what it looked like then, how easy it was, those easy money policies, versus how it is today, actually much more difficult, much tougher credit standards in the banking system overall, which means typically much higher quality loans on the output. Now, it should be noted that when we see this huge drop-off in the MCI, that big dip that happened about 14 years ago, it's been riding sideways since then, that long period that we've now had of tightened credit standards means that there's going to probably be a good prevention of a massive wave of foreclosures like we saw the last time. And that's something I want to get into now, is we're going to take a look and talk about foreclosures in the marketplace. Now, as we just said, looking at the previous data set, there's been a lot less foreclosures in the market over the last 14 years, and there's a lot less coming into the market right now, basically because there has been such a tightening of the credit standards that the loans that are in the marketplace, higher quality loans, higher quality consumer, less likely to default on these loans. That is the big end result of tightening your credit standards in the market. As I bring up this graph right here, take a look at this. Take a look at the bars that are in red. This is during the 2008 economic crisis that caused the big housing crash. This is indicative of the number of lenders that were going into the foreclosure process. You can see on the tail end in blue, we're still very low compared to any of the years that had come out of that. Also, one key indicator here that we want to look at is the fact that at that point, the majority of homeowners just simply did not have equity. In fact, they had negative equity in their homes. There's been a shift in the housing market since that time, which means that the average American homeowner is actually equity rich. And in fact, most homeowners right now, or the average homeowner in the United States, is about $300,000 in the positive on their home equity because of all of the shifts that have happened since that time back in the 2008-2009 period. So that's really the summary of today. We looked at 3 data sets that show that when we actually stop and step back from the news, step back from what we hear anecdotally, and we look at the actual data sets, what is happening in the market right now is actually nothing like what was happening back in 2008. Now, as always, guys, I would love to hear your comments on this. There's a lot of opinions out there, a lot of heated opinions one way or the other. If you're in the market, if you're not in the market, you're just watching this video, either way, go ahead, throw a comment below. Would love to hear from you there. If you happen to be in the market and you are looking at buying or selling a home, or you just want to talk to a real estate professional, as always, guys, my contact information is all linked in the post that is related to this video. Please go ahead, reach out, get in contact with me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Of course, as always, I thank each and every one of you for sticking around to the end of this video. And until the next one, see you next time.